My name is Clara Hawthorne, and at 29, I thought the most difficult part of my life was learning to say goodbye. As a palliative care nurse, I spent my days in the quiet, sacred spaces where life nears its end, and I believed I understood the geography of grief. But when my grandmother, Beatrice, passed away a month ago, I discovered that some goodbyes are not an ending, but the beginning of a war you never knew was being waged. It was my cousin Olivia who, in a moment of careless haste, revealed the first battle plan. A text meant for a family group chat flashed on my screen. "We'll reading tomorrow, 2 p.m. at Finch's office. Mum says absolutely do not tell Clara." A second message followed almost instantly. "OMG, wrong chat. So sorry. Ignore." But you can't ignore a key turning in a lock that you've just been told you're on the wrong side of. A knot of cold dread tightened in my stomach. Still, I went. As I stood before the polished oak door of the law firm the next day, a small, insistent voice that sounded uncannily like my grandmother's whispered in my ear, "You belong in any room I wanted you to be in." When I walked in, the air thickened with a silence aimed directly at me. "We've already settled the sentimental things, Clara," my Aunt Catherine said, her smile as thin and sharp as a shard of glass. "You weren't invited for a reason." The lawyer, a kind-eyed man named Mr. Finch, cleared his throat and adjusted his spectacles. He looked from my aunt's triumphant face to my own, a frown creasing his brow. "That's quite irregular," he murmured, flipping open a thick leather-bound folder. "Especially since her name is the only one in the will." The silence that followed was a different kind entirely. It was the sound of an entire world carefully constructed on a foundation of entitlement, shattering into a million pieces. If you have ever felt like an outsider in your own family, you know the strange mix of vindication and sorrow that flooded my heart in that moment. My family's story, and my own, was about to be rewritten, and the ink was still wet on my grandmother's final, astonishing words. Growing up, I was the daughter of Beatrice Hawthorne's gentlest son, Daniel. He was the family scholar, the one who traded a future in the lucrative Hawthorne timber and holdings for a dusty office at the local university, a life dedicated to poetry and ideas rather than profit margins. My mother, a quiet botanist, shared his love for the things that grow slowly, without any thought to their market value. They raised me in a small, book-filled bungalow in the shadow of the sprawling Hawthorne estate, teaching me that wealth was a responsibility, not a right. Every Sunday, we would walk up the hill to Grandma Beatrice's house, a magnificent old craftsman in the heart of Portland's Laurelwood district. It wasn't a sterile mansion, but a home that breathed. Its dark wood paneling was saturated with the scent of beeswax and old paper, its wide porch overlooking a garden that was more beautiful chaos than manicured perfection. When I was 13, that perfect world tilted on its axis. My father passed away after a short, brutal fight with cancer, and my mother, lost in her own sea of grief, struggled to keep us afloat. Without a word of negotiation, Grandma Beatrice declared, "Clara will spend half the week with me." It was a command, not a suggestion, and for the next 5 years, my life was split between two worlds, my mother's quiet, grieving house and my grandmother's vibrant, story-filled one. Beatrice became my second parent. She was the one who taught me to bake her famous cardamom shortbread, the secret to which, she'd whisper, was letting the butter soften on the counter for exactly 1 hour. "You have flour on your chin again, little bird," she'd chuckle, dabbing it away with her thumb. It was in her sun-drenched kitchen, with the scent of baking in the air, that she taught me the most important lessons. "You see with your heart, Clara," she told me one afternoon as we pruned her prize-winning roses. "Like your father did. You look at people and see their soul, not their portfolio." She was nothing like the matriarch my Uncle Richard and Aunt Catherine wished she was. They lived in sleek, minimalist fortresses in the West Hills, their lives a testament to modern luxury. They saw Beatrice's cherished craftsman as a tear-down, her simple cotton dress as an embarrassment, and her volunteer work at a local food bank a bewildering waste of time. "Mother, you could be on the board of the art museum," my Uncle Richard would sigh during tense holiday dinners. "Why do you insist on sorting cans with those people?" "Because, Richard," she would reply, her voice deceptively mild, Those people have more interesting stories than most of the people on the board of the art museum. When I announced my decision to become a palliative care nurse, the family reaction was a predictable cocktail of confusion and disdain. At a family barbecue, my cousin Julian, already a junior executive at Hawthorne Timber, cornered me by the grill. "But why, Clara? It's so grim. And the pay is terrible. Grandma could make one call and get you a cushy marketing job at the company." "I think it's an honor to be with people in their final moments," I said simply. Julian stared at me as if I'd just started speaking a foreign language. The concept of finding meaning outside of a six-figure salary was utterly alien to him and his twin sister, Olivia. They had been raised to believe their last name was a golden ticket, and they couldn't comprehend why I would choose to stand in line with everyone else. As Beatrice entered her 80s, the vibrant woman I knew began to fade, her body slowly betraying her still sharp mind. I increased my visits, taking over the grocery shopping, helping her organize her medications, and, most importantly, just sitting with her. We'd work on jigsaw puzzles, the pieces clicking into place like shared memories. She'd tell me stories she never told anyone else, about her own grandmother, a suffragette who'd been arrested in a protest, or about how the Hawthorne fortune had nearly been lost during the Depression, saved only by her father's ingenuity. These stories were the true family jewels, the history that gave our name substance beyond the balance sheets. "Character, Clara," she told me one afternoon, her hand resting on mine, its skin as thin as parchment. "It's not what you have. It's what you do when you think no one is watching." Meanwhile, the rest of the family's visits became shorter and more perfunctory. Uncle Richard would inspect the house for signs of decay, his eyes scanning for peeling paint or loose floorboards. Aunt Catherine would arrive with lavish, impractical gifts, a silk scarf for a woman who rarely left her favorite armchair, and would leave exactly 1 hour later, checking her watch as she kissed the air beside Beatrice's cheek. The cousins, busy with their careers and social lives, appeared only for major holidays. The Christmas before she passed, Beatrice pressed a small, velvet-wrapped box into my hand. "This was my mother's," she said. Inside was a simple silver locket, tarnished with age, on a delicate chain. It was beautiful in its simplicity. "I want you to have it," she insisted, her gaze firm. "The others would only see silver. You'll see the story." I didn't know it then, but that small, sentimental gift would one day be used as a weapon against me. Our last real conversation is a memory I hold close, a perfect, polished stone in the palm of my mind. She was having a rare good day, propped up in her window seat, the afternoon sun warming her face. As I prepared to leave, she gripped my hand with surprising strength. "Clara, I've been watching all of you," she said, her blue eyes, faded but still piercing, locked on mine. "I see everything. And I've made my decisions. I'm going to set things right." I thought she was speaking of finding spiritual peace, of making her peace with God. I had no idea she was talking about us. The first tremor that signaled the coming earthquake occurred 3 years ago, when Beatrice was 86. Uncle Richard called an emergency family meeting at the house to discuss Beatrice's ongoing care. When I arrived, I found my uncle, my aunt, and a slick-looking real estate agent waiting in the living room. "We've decided it's time to sell the Seacliff property," Richard announced, referring to the beloved family cabin on the Oregon coast where Beatrice had spent every summer of her life. "It's a drain on resources, Mother can't use it anymore, and it's the practical thing to do." I looked at Beatrice. Her face was a placid mask, but I saw the telltale tightening around her lips. "Did Grandma agree to this?" I asked, keeping my voice level. "Amanda, dear," Aunt Catherine said, her tone dripping with condescension. "Your grandmother understands the financial realities. She knows her limitations." "Actually," I said, turning to my aunt, "we were just talking last week. She said she was looking forward to feeling the sea breeze this summer." A thick silence fell over the room. Beatrice finally spoke, her voice quiet but firm. "Clara is right. I have no intention of selling my home by the sea." The real estate agent made a hasty exit. As soon as the front door closed, Richard turned on me, his face flushed with anger. "You have no idea what you're doing," he hissed. You waltz in here, play the doting granddaughter, and undermine decisions that are for her own good. You don't understand the business side of this family. I understand that it's her property, I replied evenly. And her decision. Later that evening, after the others had left, Richard cornered me in the kitchen. Listen to me, he said, his voice a low threat. You might think you're special, but you're playing with fire. Don't forget who built this family's legacy. It certainly wasn't your poet father. The jab at my dad hurt more than he could know, but I held his gaze. This isn't about legacy, Uncle Richard. It's about respect. From that day on, a subtle but insidious campaign began. Whispers followed me at family gatherings. Olivia would make pointed remarks about gold diggers who prey on the elderly. Aunt Catherine began accidentally leaving me off email chains about family plans. I was being systematically edged out, painted as a manipulative interloper. I tried to fight back with reason, sending emails to my aunts and uncles, explaining that my only concern was Beatrice's happiness. The replies were dismissive. We all want what's best for Mother, Catherine wrote back, the subtext clear, and you don't know what that is. The final years were a slow, painful freezing out. They instituted a visiting schedule to prevent Beatrice from getting overtired, which conveniently limited my time with her and ensured a family member was always present, preventing any private conversation. I found ways around it. I'd bring her lunch on my days off, sharing soup and stories in the kitchen. Her caregiver, Sophia, a wonderful woman who genuinely loved Beatrice, would call me on the sly. She's having a good day today, she'd whisper into the phone. She's asking for you. The last Christmas, I wasn't invited to the family celebration at all. We're keeping it very small and quiet this year for Mother's sake, Catherine's text read. I later learned from Sophia that small and quiet meant everyone but me. On Christmas Eve, I left a package on the porch for Sophia to give her, a batch of her favorite cardamom shortbread, a cashmere throw in her preferred shade of blue, and a photo album I'd made, filled with pictures of her beloved Seacliff cabin through the decades. When Beatrice passed away in April, it was Sophia who called me, her voice choked with tears. By the time I arrived at the house, Richard and Catherine were already there, coolly discussing arrangements with a funeral director. Oh, Clara, Catherine said, her eyes devoid of warmth. We were just about to call you. The funeral was the final, public demonstration of my exile. I was seated 3 rows back, behind distant cousins who hadn't seen Beatrice in years. Richard delivered a eulogy that felt more like a corporate history of Hawthorne timber, focusing on my grandfather's business acumen. Through it all, I kept hearing Beatrice's voice in my head. I'm going to set things right. I just hadn't understood that she meant she was going to do it after she was gone. 2 weeks after the funeral, Olivia's accidental text arrived, and I knew I had a choice. I could retreat, nurse my wounds, and let them have their victory, or I could honor the woman who had taught me to stand up for myself. The next day, I dressed with deliberate care in a simple forest green dress Beatrice had always loved. As I drove to the law offices of Finch and Sterling downtown, my heart hammered against my ribs. I sat in my car in the parking garage for a full 5 minutes, breathing deeply, gathering the scattered fragments of my courage. You belong here, I told myself. You are her granddaughter. The waiting room was a tableau of familial hostility. Uncle Richard, Aunt Catherine, Olivia, Julian, and a handful of other relatives were clustered together, their conversations stopping the moment I entered. Clara. Catherine's voice was ice. What are you doing here? I'm here for my grandmother's will reading, I said, my own voice steadier than I felt. This is a private matter. For family, Richard stated, stepping forward as if to physically bar my way. I am family, I said. She means the family who actually mattered, Olivia sneered. Before the argument could escalate, the door to the conference room opened. Mr. Finch, a tall, impeccably dressed man in his late 60s, looked out. Everyone here for the estate of Beatrice Hawthorne, he inquired, his gaze falling on our tense circle. Is there an issue? Mr. Finch, Catherine said, her voice shifting to a syrupy sweetness. I'm so sorry for the confusion. Our niece, Clara, wasn't meant to be part of today's proceedings. Mr. Finch's eyebrows rose. He consulted a clipboard. Clara Hawthorne? Daniel Hawthorne's daughter. Yes, that's me, I confirmed. Then you most certainly are meant to be here, he said firmly. Please, everyone, come in. I chose a chair at the far end of the long mahogany table, feeling the weight of their collective glares. The room was grand and intimidating, but I focused on a small detail, a framed botanical print on the wall, a variety of rows I knew Beatrice had grown and drew strength from it. Mr. Finch cleared his throat. Before we begin, I want to state for the record that Beatrice was not only my client for over 40 years, but also a dear friend. She was exceptionally clear and precise in her final wishes, and it is my duty to see them executed to the letter. He reached for the folder, but Catherine held up a hand. If I may, Mr. Finch, just to save everyone time. We've already handled the small sentimental things. We didn't want to trouble you with the minutiae. Her eyes flickered towards me. We've already settled everything. You weren't invited for a reason. Mr. Finch's expression hardened. Mrs. Thorne, I'm afraid there has been a profound misunderstanding. Nothing should have been distributed. And as for Miss Hawthorne not being invited, he opened the will, his gaze sweeping over the first page. That would have been a grave oversight, considering the circumstances. What circumstances? Richard demanded, his voice sharp with impatience. Mr. Finch looked up, his gaze moving slowly around the table before settling on me. I mean, he said, his voice ringing with quiet authority, that her name is the only one in the will. The shattering silence that followed was absolute. For a single, stretched-out moment, no one moved, no one breathed. Julian dropped his pen, and it clattered on the polished table with the force of a gunshot. That's absurd, Richard finally choked out, his face mottling with color. A mistake has been made. I assure you, I do not make mistakes of this magnitude, Mr. Finch said coolly. Perhaps I should simply read. He donned his reading glasses. I, Beatrice Eleanor Hawthorne, being of sound mind and body, do hereby declare this to be my last will and testament. He read through the legal preamble before arriving at the heart of the document. After many years of careful and quiet observation, I have made the following decision regarding my estate. I hereby bequeath my entire worldly estate, including my primary residence at 142 Laurelwood Lane, my property at Seacliff, Oregon, all financial instruments, investment portfolios, personal effects, and family heirlooms, solely and entirely to my beloved granddaughter, Clara and Hawthorne. A collective gasp sucked the air from the room. Olivia let out a small, strangled sob. We'll contest, Catherine said, her voice shaking with fury. She was obviously not in her right mind. She was susceptible to undue influence. Mr. Finch continued as if she hadn't spoken. I have attached a personal letter for Clara, which Mr. Finch will provide to her. In it, I explain the reasoning behind my decision, a decision made with a clear mind and a full heart. He looked up. Beatrice anticipated this reaction. She took extraordinary measures to validate her competency, including evaluations by 3 independent geriatric specialists in the 6 months prior to her death. All 3 certified her as being of exceptionally sound mind. Beatrice's words echoed in my mind. I've been watching all of you. She hadn't just been observing, she had been gathering evidence. She had been conducting a long, silent trial, and the verdict had just been read. Mr. Finch slid a thick, cream-colored envelope across the table to me. Beatrice asked that you read this privately, Clara. But perhaps under the circumstances. My hands trembled as I broke the seal. The letter was in her familiar, elegant script. My dearest Clara, if you are reading this, I am off tending a new garden, and you are likely in a room full of very unhappy relatives. I imagine they are shocked. They shouldn't be. For years, I watched. Richard visited when he wanted to discuss my assets. Catherine visited with gifts that cost a great deal but meant very little. Olivia and Julian called on schedule, ticking a box of familial duty. But you, my little bird, you came to be with me. You came with soup when I was ill and books when I was bored. You held my hand and listened to my stories, treating me as a person, not a trust fund. I have spent years testing my family, Clara. I saw who valued my presence and who valued my possessions. You were the only one who never, not once, failed the test. The locket I gave you is a symbol. It has little monetary value, but immense sentimental worth. I knew you were the only one who would understand the difference. With all my love and my complete faith in you, Grandma Beatrice. I looked up, tears blurring my vision. The room was descending into chaos. Richard was on his phone, barking at his lawyer. Catherine was accusing Mr. Finch of conspiring with me. There is one more thing, Mr. Finch said, his voice cutting through the din. Beatrice was aware that certain items had been removed from her homes over the past few years. She kept a detailed, photographed inventory of all her possessions. That's preposterous. Catherine scoffed, though a flicker of fear crossed her face. Is it? Mr. Finch replied, raising an eyebrow. Then perhaps you could explain the disappearance of the matched pair of Tiffany lamps from her study? Or the diamond earrings Rachel was photographed wearing at a gala last month? Or the antique maritime maps from the Seacliff cabin that now hang in Richard's home office? The color drained from their faces. The will contains a final clause, Mr. Finch said, delivering the coup de grace. All property removed without Beatrice's explicit written permission must be returned to the estate within 30 days. Any failure to comply will be treated as felony theft and pursued by the full extent of the law. Richard slammed his phone down on the table and pointed a shaking finger at me. This is your fault. You twisted her mind. You turned an old woman against her own blood. I thought of all the quiet afternoons, the shared laughter, the secrets whispered over cups of tea. I thought of the way her face would light up when I walked through the door. I found my voice, and it was as clear and steady as my grandmother's had been. No, Uncle Richard, I said quietly. You all did this to yourselves. Grandma Beatrice just saw it clearly. The days that followed the will reading were a maelstrom. Uncle Richard's parting shot at the lawyer's office, "This is not over," proved to be a solemn promise. My phone, which had been silent for weeks, began to ring incessantly. Voicemails filled up with a cacophony of rage, pleading, and threats. Clara, it's Catherine. This is a disgrace. Your grandmother was ill. You know as well as I do that you must do the right thing and divide the estate as she would have wanted. Hey, Clara, Julian here. Look, that antique watch of Grandpa's, she always said that was for me. It's a guy thing, you know? Just let me come pick it up and we can be cool. Clara, this is Richard. I have retained counsel. What you have done is a form of elder abuse, and we will prove it in a court of law. The attacks quickly spilled into the public sphere. Olivia posted a vague but venomous message on her social media. So sad when you see someone's true, grasping nature revealed. Some people will do anything for money, even betray their own family. Friends of hers, people I barely knew, liked and commented in agreement. I changed my number and made my online presence private, but the stress was a physical entity, a weight pressing down on my chest. I couldn't sleep, I couldn't eat. At work, my focus, usually so sharp, was blurred. My supervisor, a compassionate woman named Linda, pulled me aside after I misread a patient's chart. Clara, what's going on? She asked gently. This isn't you. The dam broke. In the quiet of her office, I told her everything. She listened without judgment and then insisted I take a leave of absence. Go sort this out, she said. Your patients need you whole. We'll be here when you get back. That week, I finally used my old key to let myself into Beatrice's house. My house. The air was still and held the faint, familiar scent of lavender and old books, but it felt plundered. There were stark, pale rectangles on the walls where paintings had once hung. The mantelpiece was bare, missing the collection of antique clocks. In her bedroom, the velvet-lined jewelry box lay open and nearly empty. They hadn't just taken the valuable things. They had taken the memories. The hand-crocheted afghan from the back of her favorite reading chair was gone. The set of mismatched teacups she'd collected from antique stores was missing. Even the worn, flour-dusted recipe book with her handwritten notes was gone. I sank onto the bare mattress of her bed. The beautiful handmade quilt she'd cherished also vanished, and I wept. Not for the loss of things, but for the violent erasure of a life I had so desperately wanted to preserve. In the back of her walk-in closet, behind a stack of hat boxes, I found a small, locked safe. I tried her birthday, my grandfather's birthday, my father's birthday. Nothing. Finally, on a whim, I tried the date of their wedding anniversary. The lock clicked open. Inside was a leather-bound journal, a handful of USB drives, and a note in her familiar script, for Clara. If they fight you. The journal was a meticulous record of the last 5 years. Every visit, every phone call, every gift given, every promise made, every item borrowed and never returned. An entry from 8 months ago read, Richard visited. Spent 5 minutes asking about my arthritis, then 35 explaining why selling the Seacliff cabin was the most logical step to simplify my portfolio. He called my attachment to it sentimental and impractical. He doesn't know I had it appraised last year. It's not an asset to be liquidated. It's a sanctuary. He has never understood the things you cannot put a price on. Another, more chilling entry, Catherine and Olivia stopped by. While Catherine distracted me with talk of a charity luncheon, Olivia was upstairs for a long time. Later, I noticed my diamond earrings were gone from my jewelry box. The ones Harold gave me for our 40th anniversary. I have updated the inventory. I wonder if they know the new security system includes a camera in the upstairs hall. Armed with this damning evidence, I called Mr. Finch. I need a litigator, I told him. They're not just contesting the will. They're thieves. Beatrice was a remarkable woman, he said grimly. She prepared for every eventuality. He connected me with Evelyn Reed, a lawyer whose reputation was as sharp as her tailored suits. She reviewed Beatrice's meticulous records with a grimly satisfied expression. Your grandmother didn't just have a case, Evelyn said. She built a fortress. Our legal counteroffensive only escalated their campaign. Richard filed the official lawsuit, citing undue influence and lack of testamentary capacity. Catherine, in a move of breathtaking cruelty, began calling the families of my former patients, suggesting I was an opportunist who had taken advantage of her own grandmother and might do the same to others. Linda called me into her office, her face etched with concern. Clara, I know this is nonsense, but she's upsetting vulnerable people. Our board is getting nervous. My career, my calling, the one thing that was wholly mine, was now under attack. The panic attacks started soon after. I'd be in the grocery store and my heart would start racing, the walls closing in. My doctor prescribed medication and urged me to find a therapist. This is trauma, Clara, she said. What your family is doing is a form of profound psychological abuse. One evening, staring at an eviction notice they'd had a lawyer send me for, illegally occupying the property, I hit my lowest point. I was ready to surrender. I would give them the money, the houses, everything, just to make it stop. I pulled out Beatrice's letter, the paper soft from being read so many times, when my phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. Clara, it's Sophia, your grandma's caregiver. There are a few things she gave me to hold for you. She said I was to give them to you only when things got very bad. I think now is the time. We met at a quiet coffee shop the next day. Sophia handed me a small box. She recorded these over the last year, she explained. She said they were her insurance policy. Inside were more memory cards and a small digital video camera. Back in the safety of my small apartment, I inserted the first card into my laptop. And there she was. Beatrice, sitting in her favorite wingback chair, looking directly into the camera. She was frail, but her eyes were luminous with intelligence and purpose. My name is Beatrice Eleanor Hawthorne, she began, her voice clear and strong. Today's date is May 12th. I am recording this statement of my own free will and in full possession of my mental faculties, as my attorney, Mr. Alastair Finch, who is present, can attest. The camera panned slightly to show Mr. Finch, who nodded soberly at the camera. I am creating this record, Beatrice continued, to leave no doubt as to the intent and reasoning behind my last will and testament. One by one, I watched the videos. In each, she calmly and lucidly detailed her observations of her family, citing specific dates and incidents. She spoke of her disappointment in Richard's relentless focus on money, Catherine's obsession with social status, and her grandchildren's sense of entitlement. Then she spoke of me. Clara never asked for a thing, she said, a soft smile touching her lips. She brought me her time, her attention, and her love. The greatest gifts of all. This inheritance is not a prize she won. It is a responsibility I am entrusting to her, because I know she is the only one who understands its true worth. In the final video, recorded just 3 weeks before her death, she looked directly at me. Clara, my little bird. If you are watching this, it means they are fighting you, just as I knew they would. Remember what I told you. Sometimes the kindest thing you can do is to draw a line in the sand. I did not raise you to be a doormat. I raised you to have a spine of steel, just like mine. A surge of strength, pure and hot, flooded through me. She hadn't just left me an inheritance, she had left me an arsenal. The next morning, I walked into Evelyn Reed's office and placed the camera on her desk. I think you'll want to see this, I said. After viewing the videos, Evelyn leaned back in her chair, a slow, dangerous smile spreading across her face. Well, she said, this changes the game entirely. Let's schedule a meeting. The meeting took place in the same conference room where the will had been read. Richard and his lawyer, Catherine, Olivia, and Julian all filed in, their expressions a mixture of arrogance and anxiety. Thank you for coming, Evelyn began smoothly. We have some materials we'd like to share in the interest of resolving this matter efficiently. She dimmed the lights and a large screen descended from the ceiling. Beatrice's face, clear and resolute, filled the screen. My name is Beatrice Eleanor Hawthorne. As the first video played, I watched their faces. Richard's bravado melted away, replaced by a pasty gray pallor. Catherine's hand flew to her pearls, her breath coming in short, sharp gasps. Olivia began to weep silently. When the clip ended, Evelyn switched the screen to a detailed spreadsheet. This is the inventory of items removed from Mrs. Hawthorne's properties, complete with photographic evidence, dates of removal gleaned from security footage, and their insured value. The total comes to just under $500,000. She let that sink in. Miss Hawthorne is prepared to file a report for felony grand larceny if the items are not returned within 7 days. Furthermore, she added, her voice dropping, we have records of certain financial transactions that the district attorney's office might find very interesting. Richard's lawyer leaned over and whispered frantically in his ear. After a long, tense moment, Richard cleared his throat. It seems there has been a misunderstanding. Emotions have been running high. Especially when there's an inheritance at stake, I added quietly. 2 days later, their lawsuit was withdrawn. A week after that, unmarked moving vans began appearing at the house, depositing furniture and boxes on the porch. The jewelry was returned by an armored courier. There were no apologies, only the silent, reluctant return of stolen goods. I thought that would be the end of it, but one evening, my phone rang. It was Aunt Catherine. Clara, she said, her voice small and stripped of its usual artifice. I didn't know. I didn't understand what your visits meant to her. You never bothered to ask, I said, not unkindly. There was a long pause. We thought you were manipulating her. We couldn't see why she would prefer you. Because I didn't want anything from her, I said. Some of us would like a chance to talk, she said haltingly. When you're ready. I'll think about it, I said, and for the first time, I believed it was possible. In the weeks that followed, I made an offer. I invited each of them to the house, one by one, to choose a single item of sentimental value. Richard refused, his pride too great. But Olivia, to my surprise, asked for the worn recipe book. She taught me how to make these shortbread cookies once, she mumbled, her eyes on the floor. It's the only time I can remember us just being together. Julian chose our grandfather's old fly-fishing rod from the Seacliff cabin. Catherine asked for a small, amateur watercolor of a sunset over the ocean that Beatrice had painted on her honeymoon. It wasn't forgiveness. It wasn't a healing. But it was a start. It was an acknowledgement that Beatrice had been a person, not just a portfolio, and that we had all, in our own way, lost her. The court finalized the probate, and the battle was officially over. I had won. But standing on the porch of my grandmother's house, I felt the profound and lonely cost of that victory. 6 months have passed. The Laurelwood house is mine now, not just in name, but in spirit. I have filled its quiet rooms with my own life, adding new books to the shelves and new flowers to the garden, but I've kept the heart of it, Beatrice's heart intact. The inheritance allowed me to take a leave from nursing and establish the Beatrice Hawthorne Foundation, a nonprofit dedicated to providing in-home support and advocacy for low-income seniors. It is the work of my heart, the perfect marriage of my grandmother's resources and my own calling. The healing with my family has been a slow, tentative process, like the first green shoots pushing through frozen ground. Olivia brings her new baby daughter, named Beatrice, to visit the garden sometimes. Julian invited me to his wedding. Catherine sends hesitant, carefully worded emails, asking about the foundation's work. Uncle Richard remains silent, a ghost in our fractured family portrait. Some rifts are too deep to be bridged, and I have made my peace with that. Last month, while sorting through the last of Beatrice's papers, I found one final letter, tucked into a copy of her favorite book of poetry. It was addressed to me, for when the dust has settled. My dearest Clara, if you are reading this, the storm has passed. I am sorry for the battle I put you through, but I knew you were the only one strong enough to fight it. My legacy was never about the money, my little bird. It was about an idea, the idea that kindness is a strength, that integrity is more valuable than any stock, and that a life well lived is measured in the love you give away. I did not give you this inheritance to punish them. I gave it to you to empower you, to give you the freedom to be more of who you already are. Do not let it become a weight. Let it be a pair of wings. Build something beautiful. Heal what is broken. Live a life of purpose and joy. And know that I am so very proud of the woman you have become. Tears fell onto the page, but they were not tears of sorrow. They were tears of gratitude. I had lost a family, but I had found myself. I had been given an inheritance, but the true gift was the lesson that came with it, that our real worth is not what we own, but what we stand for.